This story is the reason I will never trust another stranger, ever again. I'm no longer homeless, but there were a couple solid years there where I really settled into being the worst version of myself. I couldn't see it at the time, but I had been making shitty choices and gradually but consistently alienating everyone in my life, and eventually it landed me on the street. That more or less paved the way for probably the most horrific experience of my life. During that period, I spent a lot of time at the library because it was warm, quiet, and I could use the internet. The library was kind of like a safe zone. Outdoors at night, it always felt like the Wild West, but during the day, I could at least find some semblance of comfort in there. Nobody really bothered me. Usually, people avoided me altogether. I got looks sometimes, but mostly people just ignored me, and I was fine with that. So this one day, I was pretty hungover, just kind of getting through it, and this guy sits down near me. That didn't ever happen. Most folks kept at least a seat or two away. This guy didn't. Just sat down right next to me. When you're in the position that I was and something like this happens, the only assumption you can make is that either this guy is homeless too, or he's a weirdo or something. But he was totally normal, middle-aged, clean clothes, and looked like he worked some kind of office job. Not overdressed, just neat, clean, and smelled good. He was super nice to me in what felt like an authentic way, and started talking about the weather, then asked me if the internet there was decent. Just regular small talk. The only conclusion I could draw was that he was just one of those people who likes to chat and isn't afraid of other people, especially ones who looked like I did. He asked me if I came to the library often, if I lived nearby, what life on the street was like, and if I had any family. I was cautious, but at the same time, it felt strange having someone actually interested in me. It felt good. People don't usually do that. They either treat me like I'm invisible or they look at me like I'm a problem. Eventually, he explained that he was a counselor, which sort of helped all the pieces to fall into place for me. Over the next week or so, he kept showing up, always super friendly. He brought me coffee once and offered me food another time. He said I reminded him of his brother who went through a rough patch. Then he asked me where I stayed at night. I kind of brushed it off, but he kept circling back to it. Finally, he said he had a garage at his place and I could use it if I needed somewhere warm to sleep until I could get back on my feet. There was a couch in there, blankets, and it was private and safe. This was the kindest thing anyone had ever done for me. I wanted to say no. I don't like asking people for things or admitting that I need help, but I'd been freezing at night and just felt worn down. And just that general sense of danger that leads you to sleepless night after sleepless night. I told him I didn't want to be a burden and that I'd just go for one night to catch up on my rest, nothing more. He said he completely understood and that it was no problem. By that point, it was night. The library closed and I began to follow him. At first, it felt fine, but after a while, I felt like we had walked farther than I expected based on what he had described about where he lived. Not into a neighborhood, but down towards some older industrial buildings. He told me it was a shortcut, but I started getting this bad feeling. And he also wasn't talking as much as he had done in the library either. His voice was just different, flat, like he had been trying to make an impression in there or something. He walked ahead of me, and I followed. We finally stopped by what looked like an old storage shed behind one of the buildings. He told me the garage was through there and pointed. I looked in the direction he indicated, but it didn't look like anybody lived nearby at all. The whole street was dead and quiet. That's when he turned on me. Out of nowhere, he shoved me against the wall. Before I could even get my head around what was happening, he swung at me and caught me in the face. My head slammed into the side of the shed, which caused me to stumble backwards and hunch over. That's when he got both arms around me and put all his weight into getting me on the ground. He had all this energy all of a sudden, like it excited him, and was raging under his breath in this vicious tone. Then he was just beating me, punch after punch. I was panicking. My adrenaline surged and I fought back as best I could, kicking and shoving and rolling. And I don't know how I managed it, but I slipped out from under him and was able to get to my feet and run as fast as I could, bleeding from my nose, dizzy and scared out of my mind. I heard him yell after me that I was a piece of shit and that he would find me again. And then I could hear him dumping out my things on the ground and kicking them around. I found a cop car parked like 4 blocks away and begged them to help me. I told them some guy had jumped me. The cop looked me up and down and asked if I'd been drinking. He asked if I was on something. I wasn't. I tried to explain everything, but he cut me off and told me to calm down, that they couldn't file a report without more details. He basically just brushed me off, said I should go to a shelter if I didn't feel safe on the street. That was it. No report, no checking the area, nothing. I realized right then and there that no one was going to take me seriously. Not in my position. To them, I was just another crazy homeless guy rambling about nonsense. Meanwhile, that man is still out there. He very well could have killed me that night, and no one may have known or even cared. He could be looking for somebody else right now, maybe some other guy like me who's desperate for a warm place to sleep. I've gotten myself together since then, but I will never trust another stranger again, no matter how far away I get from that life on the street. I work at a library, and this happened a couple winters ago. It's one of those things that sticks with me because of what could have happened if things went just a little differently. I was working one afternoon. My memory of it was that the whole day just kind of felt dark and dreary and gray. The library had been dead quiet, maybe a handful of people inside. This is in a lesser populated area, and our library never gets packed or anything, but this was a particularly dead day. Just to give you a sense of the vibe, I think most libraries can feel a little haunted at times, but it's a bit different in the big ones that I've been in compared to how ours feels. In a large one, there's so much space it almost feels like you're in some kind of echoey cave or something. But in ours, it's so small that the carpet soaks up all the sound and it feels very isolating and eerie in a very unique way. Like every stack you pass, there could be someone hiding behind it who you had no idea was even there. Also, at that time of the year, it gets all fogged up and wet on the windows, so it always feels a bit like you're trapped in some kind of Arctic post or something. It just adds to the isolation and claustrophobia. Anyway, so I'm at the desk when this parent comes up to me, looking uneasy. They had one of the popular picture books their kid liked, and they said they found something in it while reading. They didn't know what to do, but they thought I should see it, and they handed the book to me, open to a certain page. I took the book and turned it toward me, and tucked between two pages was this folded piece of paper. The handwriting looked childish at a first glance, but once I really looked at it, it felt more like it was done on purpose, like someone trying hard to look like a kid wrote it. It read, "Hello, little adventurer. This is our secret. Come outside and meet the book fairies in the special parking lot. We'll show you something magical." I remember I had been a little fried that day from something else I had going on in my life at the time, so it really took me a moment to absorb the impact of this and how jarring it was. I tried to play it cool because the parent's kid was right there, but the parent looked horrified. I told them I'd take care of it, logged the incident, and then thanked them for bringing it up. After they left, I checked the return system. The book had been returned that morning via the return chute. Now our library is small enough that we're usually able to quickly check each book upon return, just to make sure none of the pages are torn and they look in decent shape. But this day had been so slow, I remember just scanning the few returns we had and throwing them back on the shelf without really digging into them. It wasn't my finest moment, and if I had done my job properly, this whole situation might have been avoided. Anyway, I saw that it wasn't checked out for long, but under an account that had been created recently under the name Jane Doe. We require a name and an address when we create an account, but it's not airtight because our library is pretty laid back and in a more rural area, so we're not hyper-vigilant about the rules. But now that I was looking at the account, the name stood out to me as suspicious. I left the desk and went to check the shelf myself. I thought maybe there'd be something else tucked away, or even the person who planted it hanging around. I went over to the children's section. It's always kind of claustrophobic there with all the short rows of shelves close together, and it was dead silent except for my own muffled steps on the carpet. I went through the aisle where the book belonged, checked the nearby shelves, and pulled a couple random books just to look inside. There was nothing, but it still didn't feel right. I kept replaying the wording of the note in my head about going outside to the parking lot. I should have just reported it and left it at that, but instead, I decided to take a quick look outside. My thinking was, if there was somebody actually out there waiting, I'd know for sure, and then I could call the cops. So I went out the side door near the back. It was freezing. I made my way around the side of the building to the back, crunching through the slush. Behind the building, there were no windows, just a wide dirt parking lot that extended toward a tree line way on the other end. I scanned through the back lot, and at first I didn't see anything. But then, I noticed a car parked off by itself near the far end, engine running with the lights off. The windows were cracked just barely, and I could see two people's silhouettes sitting inside. One of them was leaning forward, like they were straining to see. I could see two lit cigarette cherries glowing inside in the darkness. Then, it clicked in my head. They weren't just sitting there. They were waiting for a kid. They had written the note. I slowly backed away. Then as soon as I got enough distance, I bolted back inside, locked the door behind me, and called the police. By the time they came, whoever it was had slipped off. The officers looked around but didn't find anyone. They didn't seem all that surprised either, which somehow made it worse. Like maybe this kind of thing happens more often than anyone talks about. I gave them the information from the account, but it was either fake or stolen according to the police. It just bothers me so much and I feel so guilty. If I had been paying more attention, it's possible I could have done something sooner and maybe even gotten them caught. Thank God that parent happened to be the one who found the note. The idea that they used one of our books to try and lure a child makes me sick. Every time I shelve in the children's section now, I can't help but think about it. I even find myself compulsively checking random books just to make sure there's nothing stuffed inside of them. I keep wondering if they'll try again here or at a different library somewhere else. And what happens if the next time there isn't a parent there to notice the note first? Or if the kid is old enough to wander off without telling anyone. So this was years back when I was in grad school. It was honestly one of the scariest things I've ever gone through. I was basically living in the library at the time. Not literally, but I was there every single day without exception because I couldn't focus at my apartment due to my living arrangement with the roommate I had. It was a huge public library in the city with multiple floors and large open spaces and aisle upon aisle of books. I'd get there super early in the day, bring a lunch, and stay late into the evening most nights. During finals, it got so bad they had to ask me to leave multiple times because I'd been so engrossed in what I was doing that I hadn't even realized the time had slipped past closing. I barely saw daylight for weeks. In the end, it was all worth it to have the career I have now, but God, I hated that part of my life. The library was a little boring and depressing when it was quiet, but it was a space that felt safe and peaceful. At least that's what I thought before this happened. So this one afternoon, I'd been sitting in the same chair for hours, working through notes. I hadn't eaten, I hadn't moved much, and I finally decided to get up and go use the bathroom. At that library, the bathrooms were on the basement level. Fluorescent lights, echoey tiles, heavy stall doors, and just the fan noise. Everything got super quiet down there. That day, it was empty when I went in, which I didn't think twice about. I went into a stall, locked it, and was just zoning out. A couple minutes later, I heard the main door creak open, which is normal, people come and go. But what wasn't normal was that nothing followed. No footsteps to a stall or sink. It was like someone had come into the bathroom and just stood by the door after it closed behind them. For a second, I thought maybe it was the janitor coming in to check if anyone was in there so they could clean. Or maybe somebody who preferred more privacy and was just getting the lay of the land. But in either case, the person didn't leave. The door had opened, they walked in, stopped, and the door closed. Nothing else. It was painfully awkward and I didn't know what to do, so I just called out asking if someone was there. I waited, thinking I'd hear someone acknowledge me back or react, but there was nothing, just silence. Then, out of nowhere, I hear this noise. It was like a quiet, high-pitched mumble or something, barely audible enough to hear, but not loud enough that I could make out what they were saying. I don't even know if they were saying real words, like squeaking and then giggling. It was like someone trying to imitate a little kid. I didn't know if I was being screwed with or if I just didn't have the necessary context to make sense of it, but it was genuinely terrifying. I said something I don't remember, like hello, without even thinking, and the noise just stopped for a second. Then it started again, louder, and then footsteps moving toward me. They walked right up to the stall door. I could hear little squeals and broken words, like a fake baby voice. I can't even explain how creepy it sounded. It didn't feel playful at all. It felt 100% purposeful. Then I saw the little turn dial lock on my stall door start moving. Someone was testing it. I jumped to my feet, pulled my pants up, and yelled that someone was in here, instinctively backing up as far as I could from the stall door. That feeling of having my back to the tile wall with nowhere else to go, just looking at the stall door as whoever was on the other side was yanking to get it open, to this day gives me chills. The noises they were making got louder, and they started punching the door and reaching their hand over to yank it from the top. This wasn't someone messing around. They were violently trying to get in. I started screaming for help. Over everything else that was going on, my voice sounded like it barely carried, which gave me this incredibly doomed and hopeless feeling. Whoever it was slamming against the door now, making these horrible shrieks, like if you've ever heard coyotes attack something in the woods. I was screaming at the top of my lungs, back pressed against the tile wall. Then, suddenly, there was another sound. The bathroom door creaked open, and I heard a man's voice shouting something. In the same instant, the other noises stopped. The banging stopped. Then there was a commotion and yelling. Whoever was at my stall started running away. I heard the rush of footsteps, then the main door slamming open and shut again. I just stood there, but heard the janitor come back in asking what was going on. I couldn't even talk. I was shaking, crying, trying to get my pants buttoned up and open the stall. The janitor kept asking me if I was okay, and I just nodded, but inside I was completely wrecked. I guess he had chased them, but they had been able to outrun him. He said he couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. We reported it, but no one cared. Between the janitor and I, we couldn't even give much of a description. All I had was the sound of those fake baby noises in my head. I couldn't focus for weeks after that, and I avoided the bathroom completely. If I absolutely had to go in there, I made sure there were other people around. Eventually, I stopped going to the library altogether. I know I'm not doing the best job capturing the feeling down there, but it was so disturbing. Like it wasn't just someone being weird. It felt dangerous. The way they tried to break in, the way they came in silently at first and listened, then the noises. I had no idea what they wanted, but they weren't just messing around. They wanted me alone. They wanted me trapped. If the janitor hadn't walked in at that exact moment, I honestly don't know what would have happened. And the worst part is, nobody ever caught them. I still don't know who it was. Nobody does. Every time I lock myself into a stall, I feel that panic all over again.